The alarm bells rang through the bridge of the human patrol ship Defiance. Jake Murphy looked up from his equipment check as Captain Lisa Stone rushed to the communications panel. "What do we have?" the captain asked. "Distress signal, ma'am," replied Communications Officer Pete Davis. "Coming from Sector 77 Alpha. Looks like a transport ship in trouble." Jake stood up from his workbench. As the ship's Marine Sergeant, he was always ready for rescue missions. His combat armor hung nearby, polished and maintained like everything else in his care. "Distance?" Captain Stone asked. "About 2 hours at full speed," Pete answered. "But, Captain, that sector is pretty close to the restricted zone around Harmony 7. Harmony 7? Jake had heard about that place. It was some kind of neutral space station where aliens held their big meetings. Humans were not welcome there. The alien species made that very clear when they built it. Captain Stone frowned. "We cannot ignore a distress call. Prep the shuttle. Murphy, take basic rescue gear." "Yes, ma'am." Jake headed for the shuttle bay. His stomach felt tight with excitement and worry. They were not supposed to go near alien space, but people in trouble needed help. That was the human way. The shuttle ranger was small but fast. Jake loaded medical supplies, cutting tools, and emergency rations. He strapped on his sidearm out of habit. Space could be dangerous, and Marines stayed ready as Jake flew toward the distress signal. He thought about the war happening in the outer parts of the galaxy. 12 different alien species were fighting over territory and resources. The battles had been going on for years. Millions had died. The aliens called it the Outer Rim War. Humans had tried to help make peace, but the aliens said no. They told Earth's ambassadors that humans were too young, too violent, and too unpredictable to join galactic politics. Humanity had only been traveling between stars for 200 years. The aliens had been doing it for thousands. Jake's radio crackled. "Murphy, this is Defiance. We are picking up some strange readings from your area." "What kind of readings?" Jake asked. "Heavy ship traffic, military vessels. You might want to be careful out there." Jake checked his instruments. The distress signal was getting stronger, but he could not see any damaged ships on his screens. Something felt wrong. Then space around him lit up with bright lights. Massive alien ships appeared from nowhere, surrounding his tiny shuttle. Jake's heart pounded as he realized his mistake. The distress signal had led him straight into the middle of the alien fleet protecting Harmony 7. "Human vessel, you are in restricted space," a voice said over his radio. The translator made it sound mechanical and cold. "Shut down your engines and prepare to be boarded." Jake had no choice. His small shuttle could not outrun military ships. He powered down and waited as a sleek alien boarding craft attached to his airlock. 3 aliens entered his shuttle. Jake had never seen their species before. They were tall and thin, with blue-gray skin and large eyes. Their movements were smooth and graceful. Each wore what looked like ceremonial robes instead of military uniforms. "I am Security Chief Nalvin." "Of the Altarian delegation?" the leader said. His English was perfect, though he spoke with a strange accent. "You are in violation of galactic law." "I am Sergeant Jake Murphy, Earth Defense Force," Jake replied. He tried to keep his voice steady. "I was responding to a distress signal." The alien called Nalvin studied a small device in his hand. "There is no distress signal in this area. Your instruments must have malfunctioned." Jake felt embarrassed and confused. How could his equipment be so wrong? But arguing would not help his situation. "I apologize for the mistake," Jake said. "I will leave immediately." "I am afraid that is not possible," Nalvin replied. "You have seen the location of the Peace Summit. For security reasons, you must remain on Harmony 7 until the meetings are finished." Peace Summit. Jake realized what he had stumbled into. The 12 alien species were meeting to try to end their war. And somehow he had crashed their secret party. The aliens escorted Jake through the airlock into their ship. The inside was beautiful, with curved walls that seemed to glow with soft light. Everything was clean and elegant, very different from human ships with their practical metal corridors. They traveled for several minutes before docking with Harmony 7. Jake had expected a military station, but this looked more like a floating city. The main hub was huge, with multiple arms stretching out like the spokes of a wheel. Ships from many different species hung in space around it. As they walked through the station, Jake saw aliens he had only read about in Earth's files. Short, stocky beings in powered armor who might be Zephyrians. Tall, graceful creatures that could be ethereals. Groups of identical beings that moved together like they shared one mind. All of them stopped to stare at Jake. Some pointed and whispered to each other. A few made sounds that Jake hoped were not hostile. He had never felt so out of place in his life. Nalvin led him to a large chamber with curved walls and a domed ceiling. The room was filled with delegates from different species, each sitting in areas designed for their specific needs. Some sat in chairs, others stood at tall platforms, and a few floated in tanks of liquid. At the center of the room stood an alien Jake recognized from Earth's diplomatic files, Ambassador Veltar of the Altarians. She was taller than the others of her species, with silver markings on her blue skin that showed her high rank. "Ambassador," Nalvin said, "we found this human in restricted space. He claims to have been following a false distress signal." Veltar studied Jake with large, intelligent eyes. "A human," she said softly. "How interesting. How very interesting." Indeed, the chamber fell silent. Jake could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching him. Some looked curious, others seemed angry or afraid. He was probably the first human any of them had ever seen in person. "I should send you back to your ship immediately," Veltar continued. "But perhaps this is an opportunity. Would you like to observe our proceedings, Sergeant Murphy? As an unofficial witness to history?" Jake looked around the room at the assembled aliens. These beings were trying to end a war that had killed millions. Even if humans were not invited, maybe he could learn something useful. "Yes, ma'am," Jake replied. "I would be honored." Veltar smiled, showing teeth that were slightly too sharp to be comforting. "Excellent. Let us see what a human perspective brings to our ancient problems." Image description for Leonardo AI. A young human marine in dark blue military uniform, standing in a massive circular alien chamber with curved glowing walls and a domed ceiling. Around him are various exotic alien species, tall blue-skinned beings in robes, short armored creatures, floating jellyfish-like entities, and groups of identical humanoids. The Marine looks determined but slightly overwhelmed, surrounded by dozens of alien delegates all staring at him with curiosity, suspicion, and surprise. The chamber has a futuristic design with soft bioluminescent lighting and different sections adapted for each alien species' needs. The scene captures the moment of first contact between humanity and galactic civilization. Jake found himself sitting in a small observation area behind the main diplomatic circle. Ambassador Veltar had given him a translation device that looked like a small earpiece. Now he could understand what all the different aliens were saying. For the first hour, Jake just listened and watched. The aliens talked in ways that seemed very formal and complicated. They used big words and long sentences to say simple things. Everything had to follow exact rules and procedures. The main problem they were discussing was something called the Kepler Nebula. It was a huge cloud of gas and dust in space that had valuable minerals inside. 3 different groups claimed it belonged to them. The Zephyrians said it was theirs because they had conquered it in battle. Their war prime Krexnos was a massive creature covered in thick armor. When he spoke, his voice sounded like thunder. "The strong take what they can hold," he declared. "The nebula belongs to those with the power to defend it." The Mining Guild disagreed. Their representative was a thin alien with 4 arms named Trademaster Gixel. "Economic development gives us the right to extract resources," Gixel argued. "We have invested billions of credits in mining equipment." But there was a third group that nobody seemed to listen to. The nebula dwellers were small, peaceful beings who had lived in the gas clouds for thousands of years. Their speaker, a tiny creature named Whisper of Wines, kept trying to explain that the nebula was their home. "We do not own the nebula," Whisper of Wines said in a voice so soft Jake had to strain to hear. We are part of it, and it is part of us. You cannot mine a living thing. The other aliens ignored her. Jake noticed this happened a lot. The bigger, stronger species talked over the smaller ones. The loud voices drowned out the quiet ones. As the day went on, Jake began to see patterns in how each group thought. The Zephyrians could only think about strength and weakness. Everything was about who could beat who in a fight. The Trademaster Gixel saw everything in terms of money and profit. The collective delegates moved and spoke as one unit, never disagreeing with each other. Even the wise ethereals seemed stuck in their ways. Speaker Luminous was an ancient being that glowed with soft light. She had mediated conflicts for thousands of years, but she always suggested the same old solutions. Traditional arbitration protocols, she would say, following established precedent. Jake started to understand why this war had been going on for so long. These aliens were all very smart, but they were trapped by the way their species had always thought. They could not see past their own viewpoints. During a break in the discussions, Jake walked over to where Ambassador Veltar was reviewing documents on a floating screen. "Excuse me, ma'am," Jake said politely. "Can I ask a question?" Veltar looked up, surprised. "Of course, Sergeant Murphy. What puzzles you?" "Well, everyone keeps talking about who owns the nebula," Jake said. "But what if that is the wrong question?" "I do not understand," Veltar replied. Jake scratched his head, trying to find the right words. "Back on Earth, when different groups want to use the same land, we sometimes share it, like a park. Everyone can use it, but nobody owns it." Veltar stared at him. "Share it? But how would that work? Who would control access? Who would make decisions? Maybe they could take turns?" Jake suggested. "The Zephyrians could patrol it for 6 months. Then the mining guild could extract resources for 6 months. Then the nebula dwellers could have it to themselves for 6 months. Then start over. That is—" Veltar paused, looking confused. "That is not how territorial disputes are resolved. Why not?" Jake asked. Veltar did not have an answer for that. When the session resumed, Jake noticed another pattern. Every time someone suggested a solution, the other groups immediately explained why it would not work. They seemed more interested in finding problems than finding answers. The collective delegate, Node Primary Alex 9, was talking about resource distribution. The collective was a hive mind where thousands of individuals shared the same thoughts. Alex 9 spoke for all of them at once. "Individual ownership creates chaos," Alex 9 said in a voice that sounded like many people talking together. "Resources must be controlled by the group mind for maximum efficiency." Trademaster Gixel laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Hive thinking prevents innovation? Only individual competition drives progress." They argued back and forth for an hour, getting nowhere. Finally, Jake raised his hand. Excuse me," he said. The whole chamber fell silent. All the aliens turned to look at the human who dared to interrupt their debate. "I was just wondering," Jake continued, feeling nervous but pushing forward. "What if you are both right?" "Impossible," Alex 9 and Gixel said at the same time. "Well, in the human military, we work as a team, but everyone has their own job," Jake explained. "Like, I am part of a squad, but I am also responsible for my own equipment. The group and the individual both matter." "You suggest compromise," Speaker Luminous said, her voice echoing strangely. "But these concepts are fundamentally opposed." "Are they?" Jake asked. "Maybe the collective could be treated like one big individual when it comes to legal stuff. Then they could own things as a group while still being part of the bigger system." The chamber erupted in noise as aliens talked to each other in their own languages. Some sounded excited, others sounded angry. Jake could not understand what he had said that was so shocking. Ambassador Veltar leaned over to him. "Sergeant Murphy, you just suggested something that has never been tried in galactic law. The collective has always been excluded from individual property rights because they are not individuals." "But they are not individuals either," Jake said. "They are something different. Maybe they need different rules." War Prime Krexno stood up, his armor clanking loudly. The human speaks of things he does not understand, the Zephyrian growled. These are complex matters of law and tradition. Respectfully, sir, Jake said, maybe that is the problem. Maybe you understand them too well? The chamber fell silent. Again, Jake worried he had gone too far. But then Node Primary Alex 9 spoke up. Explain, the collective delegate said. Jake took a deep breath. Well, you all know so much about how things have always been done that you cannot see new ways to do them. Back home, we have a saying, you cannot solve a problem with the same. Thinking that created it, Speaker Luminous drifted closer, her light pulsing slowly. This human suggests our wisdom is a limitation. Not your wisdom, Jake said quickly, your assumptions. You assume the old ways are the only ways, but what if they are not? Ambassador Veltar was writing notes very fast on her floating screen. Jake noticed several other delegates were doing the same thing. These are interesting observations, Sergeant Murphy, Veltar said. Perhaps you would share more of your thoughts as our discussions continue. Jake nodded, not sure if he was helping or making things worse. But for the first time since he had arrived, the aliens seemed to be listening to new ideas instead of just repeating old ones. War Prime Krexnos sat back down with a loud thump. We shall see what the human perspective reveals, he rumbled. But wisdom comes from experience, not ignorance. Yes, sir, Jake agreed. But sometimes fresh eyes see things that experienced ones miss. Image description for Leonardo AI, a human. Marine in military uniform standing at the center of a futuristic alien council chamber, gesturing as he explains something to a diverse group of alien delegates. Around him are a massive armored Zephyrian warrior, tall blue-skinned Altarians taking notes, identical humanoid collective members, small peaceful nebula dwellers, floating ethereal beings of light, and various other exotic alien species. The aliens show mixed reactions. Some lean forward with interest, others appear skeptical or surprised. Holographic displays show star maps and legal documents floating in the air. The scene captures the moment when human perspective challenges ancient alien thinking patterns. The second day of the summit started with more arguments. Jake noticed that the aliens seemed to enjoy making speeches more than solving problems. Each delegate would stand up, talk for a long time, and then sit down without really listening to what anyone else had said. Speaker Luminous was presenting a case that had been going on for 3,000 years. Two star systems called the Twin Domains had been fighting over 5 small colonies that sat between them. Each system claimed the colonies belonged to them based on ancient treaties and historical rights. The Valdris Empire settled these worlds first, Speaker Luminous explained, her light pulsing as she spoke. However, the Corvani Federation provided the original terraforming technology. Both claims have merit under galactic law. The representatives from both star systems nodded their heads. They had probably heard this same explanation hundreds of times before. Jake could see they were tired of fighting, but neither side wanted to give up what they thought was theirs. Jake raised his hand. By now, the aliens were used to his interruptions. Ambassador Veltar gestured for him to speak. What do the people living on those colonies want? Jake asked. The chamber went quiet. Speaker Luminous dimmed slightly as if confused. I do not understand the question. The people who live there now, Jake explained. Do they want to be part of the Valdris Empire or the Corvani Federation? Or maybe they want to govern themselves? The silence stretched longer. Jake started to worry he had said something wrong again. Finally, the Valdris representative spoke. He was a tall, thin alien with gray skin and no hair. The colonies exist to serve the Empire. Individual preferences are irrelevant. Why? Jake asked. Because that is how governance works, the Corvani delegate replied. She looked like a giant insect with multiple arms. Territory belongs to the government that controls it. But what if it didn't have to work that way? Jake said. What if the people on those colonies could vote on which government they want to join, or vote to be independent? The reaction was immediate and loud. Aliens started talking all at once in their own languages. Some sounded angry, others sounded shocked. Jake heard the word impossible translated from several different species. War Prime Krexnos stood up. his armor making loud clanking sounds. "The human speaks nonsense," he roared. "Strength determines leadership. The strong rule, the weak. Obey, this is the natural order." "With respect, sir," Jake said, standing up to face the massive Zephyrian, "maybe natural does not mean right." Krexnos took a step toward Jake. Every alien in the chamber leaned forward. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. "You question the way of strength?" Krexnos growled. "Then prove your words with action. Face me in combat, little human. Show me this weakness you call leadership." Jake felt his heart racing. Krexnos was twice his size and covered in armor that looked like it could stop a missile. Fighting him would be suicide, but Jake had an idea. "I accept your challenge," Jake said. Several aliens gasped. "But I propose a different kind of test." "Explain," Krexnos demanded. "You say strength makes the best leader," Jake said. "I say cooperation does. Let's find out who is right." Jake walked over to a control panel he had seen Ambassador Veltar use earlier. "Can this create a training simulation?" "Yes," Veltar replied, looking puzzled. "But what does that have to do with combat?" "Set up a scenario," Jake said. "Maybe a rescue mission or a tactical problem? Something that needs to be solved, not just fought." The chamber watched as Veltar programmed the simulation. A holographic display appeared in the center of the room, showing a damaged space station with people trapped inside. The station was breaking apart and would explode in 30 minutes. "There," Jake said, turning to Krexnos. "We can both try to solve this problem. You can use strength and command. I will use cooperation and teamwork. Whoever saves more people wins." Krexnos studied the simulation. "This is not combat." "No," Jake agreed. "It's leadership. Isn't that what we are really talking about?" The War Prime was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Very well, human. You may go first." Jake looked at the holographic station. He could see several entry points, damaged sections, and groups of survivors scattered throughout. One person could not save them all. "I don't go first," Jake said. "We go together? Together?" Krexnos sounded confused. "That's the point of cooperation," Jake explained. "You take the left side of the station, I take the right side. We work as a team to save everyone." Jake offered Krexnos one of the simulation. "Controls, you're stronger and better armored. You can handle the dangerous areas where the structure is collapsing. I'm smaller and faster. I can get through the tight spaces where people are trapped." Krexnos stared at the control device in Jake's hand. "You would trust me, even though I challenged you to combat?" "Trust is what makes teams work," Jake said. "Besides, right now those simulated people need help. That's more important than proving who's tougher." Slowly, Krexnos took the control. For the next 20 minutes, the chamber watched as the human and the Zephyrian worked together to rescue the trapped survivors. Jake would spot people in hard-to-reach places and guide Krexnos to areas where his strength was needed. Krexnos would clear debris and provide cover while Jake squeezed through collapsed passages. When the simulation ended, they had saved everyone. "This is not how strength works," Krexnos said quietly. "No," Jake agreed. "It's how strength and speed and intelligence work together. One person can be strong, a team can be stronger." Krexnos removed his helmet, revealing a face that looked almost human except for the sharp teeth and glowing yellow eyes. "You fight differently than I expected, Jake Murphy." "I don't fight," Jake said. "I solve problems. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to find someone to help you." Node Primary Alex 9 had been watching the whole demonstration. "The human shows individual action serving group benefit," the collective delegate said. "This concept was unknown to us." "How is that possible?" Jake asked. "Don't you work together all the time?" "We think together," Alex 9 explained. "All thoughts are shared." "But you maintained individual identity while cooperating." "You remain separate yet unified?" Jake nodded. "That's what humans call teamwork. Everyone has their own job, but everyone works toward the same goal." "Fascinating," Speaker Luminous said, drifting closer. "Your species has developed unity through diversity rather than unity through conformity." Trademaster Gixel was taking notes on multiple devices at once. These concepts could revolutionize resource management, the four-armed alien muttered. Competitive cooperation. Individual initiative. Serving collective benefit. Ambassador Veltar was smiling, which Jake had learned meant she was pleased. Sergeant Murphy, you have given us much to think about. Perhaps tomorrow you could share more human approaches to problem-solving. Sure, Jake said. But I'm just one guy. Humans have lots of different ideas. That's kind of the point. War Prime Krexnos put his helmet back on. Tomorrow we will discuss the Kepler Nebula again, he announced. I wish to hear more of these human solutions. As the session ended, Jake noticed something different in the chamber. The aliens were talking to each other instead of just their own species. The collective delegates were asking the ethereals about individual decision-making. The Zephyrians were discussing cooperation strategies with the Altarians. For the first time since the summit began, they seemed to be learning from each other. Jake sat back in his observation chair and wondered what tomorrow would bring. He had a feeling things were about to get much more interesting. Image description for Leonardo AI. A human marine and a massive armored alien warrior standing side by side, in front of a large holographic display showing a damaged space station. The human is smaller, wearing military fatigues, while the alien warrior is twice his size in heavy battle armor with glowing yellow eyes visible through his helmet. Around them, various alien delegates watch in amazement, tall blue Altarians, insectoid creatures, floating beings of light, and groups of identical humanoids. The holographic simulation shows rescue operations in progress. The scene captures the moment of unlikely cooperation between human tactical thinking and alien strength, with both figures working together as a team while diverse alien species observe this revolutionary approach to leadership. Jake woke up on the third day to the sound of alarms echoing through Harmony 7. He quickly dressed and ran toward the main chamber, where he could hear excited voices speaking in many different languages. Ambassador Veltar met him at the entrance. Her face looked grim, and her blue skin had turned a darker shade that Jake had learned meant she was worried. What is happening? Jake asked. The worst possible news, Veltar replied. Fighting has started again in the Kepler Nebula. 3 colony ships full of refugees are trapped in the middle of a battle zone. Jake followed her into the main chamber. All the alien delegates were gathered around a large holographic display that showed the nebula in real time. Red dots marked the warships from different species. Yellow dots showed the colony ships caught between them. War Prime Krexnos was standing with his fists clenched. Cowardly Corvani attacked our mining platforms without warning, he growled. The Corvani delegate buzzed angrily. Zephyrian forces invaded our territory first. We defended ourselves. Both of your species fired on our extraction facilities? Trademaster Gixel complained, waving his 4 arms. Billions of credits in damage. Speaker Luminous floated above. The chaos, her light pulsing rapidly. The violence has escalated beyond any previous conflicts. Military fleets from 7 different species are now engaged in active combat. Jake studied the display. The 3 colony ships were civilian vessels with no weapons. Each carried about 10,000 refugees who had been fleeing the war. Now, they were trapped exactly where the heaviest fighting was happening. Why do the colony ships not move away? Jake asked. Their engines were damaged by weapons fire, Ambassador Veltar explained. They are drifting helplessly. Any ship that tries to rescue them will be seen as taking sides in the battle. Node Primary Alex 9 spoke for the collective. Our analysis shows rescue probability at less than 5%. Military priorities prevent humanitarian action. The Valdris delegate was shaking his gray head. Each fleet commander believes the others will fire on rescue ships. None dare risk their vessels for civilian lives. Jake watched the red dots moving around the yellow dots on the display. Every few seconds, bright flashes showed where weapons were being fired. The colony ships were right in the middle of it all, defenseless and forgotten. So, 30,000 people are going to die because nobody wants to stop fighting long enough to save them? Jake asked. That is the reality of war, War Prime Krexnos said heavily. Military objectives must take priority. Jake stared at the display for a long moment. Then he turned to face all the assembled delegates. No, he said quietly. The chamber fell silent. Every alien eye focused on the lone human. No. Speaker Luminous asked. No, Jake repeated louder this time. This is wrong. All of you are here trying to make peace, but you're going to let those people die because you cannot stop thinking about winning and losing. Trade Master Gixel clicked his mandibles together. The situation is beyond our control. Military. Commanders do not take orders from peace negotiators. Then maybe we are asking the wrong question, Jake said. He walked to the center of the chamber where everyone could see him clearly. You keep talking about this like it is your war, Jake continued. Zephyrian War, Kovani War, Mining Guild War. But what if we stop thinking about it that way? I do not understand, Ambassador Veltar said. Jake pointed at the holographic display. Right now, those colony ships do not belong to any of your species. They are just people who need help. What if we treated them that way? Explain, several aliens said. At the same time, Jake took a deep breath. What if we created something new? A rescue organization that does not belong to any single species. Ships and crews from all of your peoples, working together for one purpose, saving lives. The chamber erupted in noise as aliens talked to each other. Jake could hear words being translated as impossible and unprecedented and madness. You suggest a multi-species military force? War Prime Krexnos asked when the noise died down. Not military, Jake said. Humanitarian. Their only job would be rescuing people and delivering medical aid and protecting civilians. They would not fight in your wars. They would just save the people caught in the middle. Speaker Luminous dimmed almost to darkness. No such organization has ever existed in galactic history? So? Jake asked. That does not mean it cannot exist now. The collective delegate tilted his head. Command structure would be impossible. Which species would lead such an organization? All of them, Jake replied. Or none of them. Make it independent. Let it report to everyone and no one. Ambassador Veltar was writing furiously on her floating screen. The legal complications alone would take years to resolve. Those people do not have years, Jake said, pointing at the yellow dots on the display. They have maybe hours before the fighting gets too close. Trademaster Gixel was calculating something on multiple devices. The cost would be enormous. Ships, equipment, personnel from every species. How much are 30,000 lives worth? Jake asked quietly. That question hung in the air like a physical weight. Jake could see the aliens thinking, really thinking, about what he had said. Finally, the tiny voice of Whisper of Wine spoke up from her corner of the chamber. The Nebula Dwellers would join such an organization. We know what it means to need rescue. War Prime Krexnos was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke. Zephyrian ships are fast and heavily armored. We could provide protection for rescue vessels. Altarian medical technology is the most advanced in the galaxy, Ambassador Veltar added. We could handle treatment of injured civilians, Node Primary Alex 9 straightened up. Collective coordination abilities would be valuable for managing complex multi-species operations. Jake felt his heart starting to race with excitement. They were actually considering it. But who would lead the first mission? Speaker Luminous asked. Who would risk their life to prove this concept works? Jake did not hesitate. I will. Every alien in the chamber stared at him. You? War Prime Krexnos asked. Why not? Jake replied. I am already here. I do not belong to any of your military forces, so nobody can accuse me of taking sides. And if this was my idea, I should be willing to put my life behind it. Ambassador Veltar was shaking her head. Sergeant Murphy, you would be flying into an active war zone with no weapons and no backup. I would not be alone, Jake said. I would have volunteers from every species here. People who believe that saving lives is more important than winning battles. Trademaster Gixel looked up from his calculations. It could work. A small, fast ship with minimal weapons and maximum rescue capacity, flying under a new flag that represents all species. What flag? The Corvani delegate asked. Jake thought. For a moment. How about one that shows all of your symbols together? Something that says we are not here to fight anyone? We are here to help everyone. Warprime Krexno stood up slowly. I will assign my fastest ship and my best pilot to this mission. And I will provide medical equipment and personnel, Ambassador Valtar added. Collective navigation systems? Node Primary Alex 9 offered, one by one, every species in the chamber volunteered something for the rescue mission. Equipment, ships, people, expertise. Jake watched in amazement as the same aliens who had been arguing for days suddenly started. Working together. Speaker Luminous pulsed brightly. This is either the beginning of a new age of galactic cooperation or the end of several promising diplomatic careers. Jake grinned. Only one way to find out. Image description for Leonardo AI, a human marine standing in the center of a high-tech alien command center, pointing at a large holographic star map showing spaceships in battle around trapped civilian vessels. Around him, diverse alien species are all focused on the display, a massive armored warrior, elegant blue-skinned diplomats, insectoid traders, floating beings of light, groups of identical humanoids, and small peaceful creatures, the holographic display shows red military ships surrounding yellow civilian colony vessels in a nebula. The aliens show expressions of determination and hope as they volunteer resources for an unprecedented rescue mission. The scene captures the moment when ancient enemies unite behind a human's revolutionary idea to save lives together. 2 hours later, Jake found himself sitting in the pilot's seat of a ship unlike anything he had ever seen. The vessel was called Unity 1, and it had been built in record time using parts from a dozen different species. The hull came from a Zephyrian warship, fast and heavily armored. The engines were Altarian, smooth and efficient. The medical bay used collective technology that could treat injuries from any known species. Even the tiny nebula dwellers had contributed something, a special sensor array that could detect life signs through thick gas clouds. Jake was not flying alone. Behind him sat a crew of volunteers from every species at the summit. Warprime Krexnos had insisted on coming personally, saying that honor demanded he share the risk. Ambassador Veltar was running the medical station while Node Primary Alex 9 handled navigation and communications. Even little Whisper of Wines was aboard, her small form barely visible in a specially designed chair. The nebula speaks to us, she had explained. We can guide you through the safe paths. On the hull of Unity 1, painted in bright colors, was a new symbol that had never existed before. It showed the emblems of all 12 species arranged in a circle with no single symbol larger than the others. Underneath, in the common galactic language, were the words Galactic Rescue Service. As they approached the Kepler Nebula, Jake could see the battle raging ahead of them. Warships from 7 different species were firing at each other with weapons that lit up space like deadly fireworks. In the middle of it all, the 3 colony ships drifted helplessly. This is Unity 1 calling all vessels, Jake said into the radio. We are a rescue mission flying under the new Galactic Rescue Service flag. We are not taking sides in this conflict. We are here only to evacuate civilians. The response was immediate and loud. Military commanders from all the warring fleets began talking at once, demanding to know what authority Jake had and threatening to fire on any ship that interfered with their operations. Unity 1, this is Admiral Chun of the Corvani 3rd Fleet, came one angry voice. You are ordered to leave this combat zone immediately. Unity 1, this is General Vex of the Zephyrian Battle Group, came another. Any ship entering our operational area will be considered hostile. Jake looked back at his mixed crew. Warprime Krexnos nodded grimly. Ambassador Veltar was checking her medical equipment. Node Primary Alex 9 was monitoring all the military communications at once. All fleet commanders, this is Warprime Krexnos aboard Unity 1, the big Zephyrian said into the radio. I am personally guaranteeing the peaceful nature of this mission. And this is Ambassador Veltar of the Altarian Diplomatic Corps, Veltar added. The Altarian government officially recognizes the Galactic Rescue Service. One by one, each crew member identified themselves and their species' support for the mission. Jake listened in amazement as military officers who had been shooting at each other minutes before suddenly found themselves unable to fire on a ship crewed by their own people. Admiral Chun, you cannot shoot at a ship with Corvani medical personnel? Aboard, one of the Corvani captains radioed. General Vex, the Zephyrian High Command will not approve firing on War Prime Krexnos. Another voice reported. The weapons fire began to slow down as fleet commanders realized they were facing something completely new. How do you shoot at your enemies when your own allies are standing beside them? Jake piloted Unity 1 toward the first colony ship, following Whisper of Wine's guidance through the thick gas clouds. The little nebula dweller whispered directions that seemed to come from the stars themselves. Life signs are weak on the first ship, Ambassador Veltar reported. Many injured, some critical. Beginning docking procedures, Jake announced as Unity 1 attached to the colony ship. Jake could see warships from both sides moving closer to watch. None of them were firing anymore. They seemed confused by what they were seeing, the rescue. Operation took 6 hours. Jake and his crew worked together with an efficiency that amazed even themselves. Krexnos used his strength to carry injured civilians who could not walk. Veltar and her medical team treated wounds and sickness. Alex 9 coordinated the complex logistics of moving thousands of people between ships. Even the warring fleets began to help. Zephyrian ships provided escort protection. Corvani vessels offered medical supplies. Mining guild ships shared their cargo space for evacuees. What had started as one small rescue mission became the largest humanitarian operation in Galactic history. When the last civilian was safely aboard a rescue ship, Jake found himself staring at something incredible. The warships that had been shooting at each other all morning were now flying in formation, protecting the evacuated civilians. Together. This is Admiral Chun to all vessels, came a voice over the radio. The Corvani Third Fleet is declaring a temporary ceasefire to ensure safe passage for civilian evacuees. General Vex concurs, came the Zephyrian response. All Zephyrian forces will honor the rescue corridor. One by one, every fleet commander made the same announcement. The fighting had stopped, not because anyone had won or lost, but because they had found something more important to do. 3 days later, Jake stood once again in the great chamber of Harmony 7, but everything had changed. The aliens were no longer sitting in separate sections by species. They were mixed together, working in small groups on different projects. Ambassador Veltar approached him with a thick document. The Galactic Rescue Service Charter, she explained. Every species has agreed to contribute ships, personnel, and funding. The organization will be independent of any single government. And this, War Prime Krexnos added, handing Jake another document, establishes the Interspecies Medical Corps. Veltar will be the first director. Node Primary Alex 9 floated over with a third set of papers. Joint Exploration Program approved. All species will share the costs and benefits of discovering new worlds. Speaker Luminous pulsed brightly as she drifted closer. In 3,000 years of mediating conflicts, I have never seen anything like this. You have not ended the war, Sergeant Murphy. You have made it irrelevant. Jake looked around the chamber at all the aliens working together. Species that had been enemies for centuries were now planning joint missions and sharing resources. They were still different, still had disagreements, but they had learned to see past their conflicts. I did not do this, Jake said. You all did. I just asked different questions. 2 weeks later, Jake stood on the bridge of the Defiance as it prepared to leave Harmony 7. But he would not be staying aboard for long. Captain Stone handed him a new set of orders. Congratulations, Sergeant. You have been promoted to Galactic Liaison First Class. You are to report back to Harmony 7 as Earth's first official representative to the Galactic Council. Jake looked at the orders, then out the viewport at the massive space station. Ships from dozens of species were coming and going, many of them painted with the new Galactic Rescue Service symbols. "The galaxy is different now," Captain Stone said. "They are asking human advisors to help solve problems on 100 different worlds. Turns out our way of thinking is pretty valuable after all." Jake packed his gear, including the small translator device that Ambassador Veltar had given him as a gift. As he prepared to transfer back to Harmony 7, he thought about how strange life could be. A week ago, he had been a simple Marine following a distress signal. Now he was humanity's first ambassador to the stars. But the strangest thing was what he had learned about aliens. They were not so different from humans after all. They just needed someone to show them that different was not the same as wrong, and that the best solutions often came from the most unexpected places. As Jake's shuttle approached Harmony 7, he could see the new flag flying beside the station's docking bay. 12 different symbols arranged in a perfect circle, representing not victory or defeat, but something much more powerful. Working together. Image description for Leonardo AI. A diverse mixed-species crew on the bridge of a rescue starship flying through a spectacular nebula filled with swirling gas clouds and distant explosions. A human Marine sits in the pilot's seat while behind him stands a massive armored alien warrior. An elegant blue-skinned diplomat at medical stations, identical humanoid beings managing navigation, and a tiny ethereal creature providing guidance. Through the bridge windows, damaged civilian ships can be seen floating helplessly, while warships from different alien fleets surround them. The rescue ship displays a unique multicolored flag showing symbols from all 12 species arranged in a circle. The scene captures the historic moment when former enemies work together to save lives, with the human leading this unprecedented galactic rescue mission.